Hello everybody, welcome back to another Conversations with Projektor. Today we have a lot of interesting different topics to talk about. Starting off with the topic, I might be using too many tracks.
One of the things I need to be careful about here in this project is the track amount. I don't want to get too high with the amount of different sounds and different tracks that I add, because I've found that doing that just makes it take longer in the mixing process and like the finalizing process, and it doesn't tend to add a lot of extra like stuff to the track. I know you are adding more ideas and more sounds, but that doesn't mean that the track becomes better.
Does having kids hinder creativity?
Do you think having kids will hinder your creativity? I have no idea. I assume it will, because when you have kids, you tend to spend a lot of time with them, you know, especially the first few years. Everybody that I know in the production space that has had kids has said, like, I need to scale down my touring, I need to scale down what I do in terms of production. Eclip, I think, has talked about this as well. So, yeah. But to be honest, I think any change in the way that you're living will change or hinder your creativity, because you get out of the flow of normal things. But yeah, as I said, I think that any change in the way that you're living, like I remember moving to this apartment from the other apartment and it just taking a week to get back into the flow of things. And I assume that when you're having a much bigger impact in your life than moving, like having children, for example, that the impact on your creativity will be higher as well, yeah.
Does limited time make you more productive?
Having limited time makes every session more productive. Personally, I guess that would work, yeah. What I found is anytime I go like home to my parents or go on vacation or anything like that, the weeks leading up to that, I tend to be more productive because I need to get like all of the videos ready for you guys that you have to watch in those times. And I feel when I'm under pressure, I'm much better at performing in that regard, like just quickly making videos or quickly editing or anything like that. And I guess the same is true for music. To be honest, anytime I am very busy in the near future, I will not spend a lot of time on music, and I much rather spend like when I have a lot of time, I much rather spend time on the music. Because I do feel that with the way that I like to write, taking a slow approach to it in terms of not being stressed about the time that you have to work on a track usually gets me better results.
Lighting versus camera.
My light at the moment is only a living room light, so my cam is a bit flickering. To be honest, for me, it is the same. Part of your quality of the camera is going to be the lighting that you use, right? So how many lights you've set it up, how you've positioned them and stuff like that. And I've spent a lot of time getting the lighting to work over here. The easiest way to fix any lighting issues is that you just need more light. That's the cold hard truth, right? About like actual lighting. The other issue that you can have is the camera that you're using. So it's like 50-50. A terrible camera in a like well lit up studio, like actual photography studio. If you come to a photography studio with all of the best lights in the world and you take a crappy camera, then it's not going to be good. But if you take the guy who works there, his camera, and you put it into a room that is way too dark, it's also not going to be good. So you have to balance the two out. Tend to think it's pretty much just as important as what camera you use, if not more. Maybe it's even more, yes. Like a decent webcam for $100 is going to perform better, or that's okay. But I guess like crappy lighting has much more influence on it. You can make a bad camera look decent enough if the lighting is okay, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. So maybe lighting is slightly more important than the camera that you're using. To be honest, I'm kind of happy with both. The only issue that I've had a lot of people talk about is that my background, they don't like how bright it is behind me, which I kind of get, but coming from the old situation in which I had like that black cloth with the artwork on it behind me hanging, that felt very dark and very uninviting, whereas the brightness feels very nice and very happy. So that's kind of the feeling that I want to go for.
Different subgenres of Psytrance.
Have you ever produced full-on like electro, sun, dit / dust? Probably not. The type of track that you hear me make is always going to be this kind of style here, unless it is for some kind of tutorial or something like that. And even in that case, the only track that I really produced was the Cambium style track. To be honest, I'm not familiar with the name that you cited there, but the Cambium track sounds very like this, I guess. I can play a quick bit of it. So if this is the kind of sound that you're after, then yes. Otherwise, it won't be this. That's more like Dark Forest. It most certainly is not. Forest tends to be more including forest sounds, like, you know, the sampled sounds from the actual forest. And the BPM tends to be higher, towards the 160 BPM. This track over here is 145 BPM, maybe 147. So it's definitely in the full-on range there. And you can also hear, just in the kick and bass style, if I play it again, that it has that kick and bass that has a lot of higher frequencies, whereas Forest tends to focus on the kick and bass that mainly has more lower frequencies. Overall, just like the way it's arranged, the way that the drums are played as well, in that it's just kind of like your normal full on the floor drum pattern, just like we have over here. All of that suggests to me that it's not Forest and that it's more a full-on track here. It's just the kind of full-on track that you would hear Cambium make. You know, that very complex, very strong kind of full-on. I was trying to find a space where I could hear the kick and bass on its own. Maybe the outro has it. I might be mistaken in my styles. I might also be mistaken, but from what I know about Forest, there's a few very strong differences between what I was making and normal kind of Forest Psy. I think overall, the whole like talk about subgenres and people swearing by one subgenre over another or something like that, I don't really subscribe to that kind of thing. Like, I'm not sitting here and saying, oh, you need to listen to high tech or otherwise it's not real Psytrance, or if you're not listening to Dark Side, what you're doing, you know, that kind of stuff that you hear on internet forums. I hate that kind of stuff. Personally, just listen to the music that you like, express yourself, write the kind of music that you like. Don't put it in a label. Like, don't put a genre on it. A label is always nice because they help you, you know, put it out. But that's a different discussion. But overall, like, the idea that a genre is just this one thing, I guess, is also not something that I subscribe to, because there's different BPMs, there's different influences that somebody takes. Somebody can make a Forest track that sounds very, very dark, and another Forest track can sound very bright and uplifting, and both of them would be considered Forest, I guess. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what genre it is. At the end of the day, especially now with the way that streaming services and stuff like that works, it's more about just getting plays and stuff like that, rather than sticking to a specific genre. Of course, as an individual, you do want to continuously make the same kind of music, the same kind of style, so that people who follow you for that kind of music know what to expect. I love that mindset. That's why I don't really tend to keep up with one style / genre for my own tracks. Yeah, so as I was saying, personally, I do think that from a marketability standpoint, it is nice to have one style, have one genre that you're making, which is what I'm doing. As you guys can probably tell, like, I make semi-progressive, semi-full-on, kind of like in the middle, I would say, in that I'd like to play a lot with a lot of melodic elements. I like to play a lot with themes and ideas in my track, as opposed to just cool synth sounds that are playing. But I do require my track to have some of that high energy, high, like, psychedelicness sound design in there as well. So I kind of want to fuse the two ideas together. And from a marketability standpoint, from somebody who wants to, you know, make music that people actually listen to continuously, and people who follow me will follow me for this kind of style. So for that reason, I do personally stick to one genre, stick to one style. And I tend to think that tracks could also somewhat sit in the middle of different subgenres. Yes, exactly. That's what I think said before, or at least that was what I was trying to say, in that within a different subgenre, there's so much space that you can see it as like a bubble, right? So here's for Psy, here we have dark Psy, here we have high tech. There's going to be like boundaries between them. I guess I could draw this a little bit better. I guess I could whip up the little canvas over here that you guys probably all know if you follow the stream. But you have like forest Psy over here, and then dark Psy will be closely related to that. You can sit like on the boundary, right? It's hard to argue that you're either of the genres here. So this is, you can sit exactly in here, and then there will be, I don't know, high tech will be like over here or something like that, and then there will be the, I guess, full on would be here-ish, because full on is closely related to both forest and dark Psy. And then progressive tends to be brighter, but it also tends to use a lot of samples and a lot of, sometimes some foresty elements. So I guess we could put full on or the progressive stuff over here. This is just like my way of thinking about the different subgenres. This would be high tech. And then what I like to differentiate between is the kind of progressive that Asterix makes and the kind of progressive that an artist like Omnikey or Neelix makes. And that second version, I call that prog, right? Which is the progressive stuff that doesn't necessarily revolve around slowly building up, which is the original definition of progressive, but it focuses more on kind of taking everything from other EDM genres, from big room, from drum and bass. Usually there's like a vocal involved, and they just put a kick and bass under that for Psytrance. So that would be like prog. So this is all within Psytrance, but then you could argue like, okay, then here there would be just like normal EDM or big room or whatever. I guess I could call big room. I literally gave myself the least amount of space to write this. EDM. Right, so you could kind of identify it like that. There's always going to be boundaries between where it's one or the other. There's always going to be boundaries here. There's going to be, oh, is this really full on? Does this have a little bit more progressive? Personally, I would like to say that I am right about here in this area with the way that I write. But there's going to be other artists that going to, I don't know, going to go from here to here, and they're going to do a little bit of progressive and something like this, and maybe they have like a big room project that they have under a different name, right? So everybody can kind of draw a circle in a diagram like this on what they all do in terms of different things, in terms of different genres. From a marketability standpoint, I think that being very close, like being very big in terms of what you do, is a bad idea if you just purely want to have people follow you for the music that you make, because people might enjoy this part of your discography but not enjoy this part of your discography, and therefore not listen to, for example, an album of yours or a playlist of yours, even from Electro House Complexo sometimes. I guess that's what I mean by like big room EDM, or the standard kind of EDM. It all the different genres that together form electronic music. And technically speaking, Psytrance also falls under the umbrella term EDM, right? The funniest thing at the end of the day is that all of this does not matter. Just write the music that you want to write. The only reason why it matters is it is handy for the listener to identify what they're doing or what they're listening to, I guess. And therefore, who to follow as an artist, what do they like, which, if an artist make this kind of music, do I like that kind of music? Looking at the subgenre that they have, yes, I like that subgenre, let's follow this artist. It's handy for the listener, but it's not really handy from a producer. Because at the end of the day, it is a limit having this kind of bubble around, and if you fall outside of the bubble, then it's no longer called that. There's only good music and bad music and Taylor Swift. Are you suggesting that Taylor Swift is either better than good or worse than bad? Because whatever you're suggesting, there's going to be like 4 levels, right? You're going to have the highest level, and then you're going to have good, you're going to have bad, and then Taylor Swift, or Taylor Swift is over here and this level doesn't exist. EDM was never a genre. It's an umbrella term for multiple different genres, I guess then. It would be the same as saying like guitar music, right? Any genre that uses guitar a lot, like rock, from rock to metal to heavy metal, All of those things are technically different genres or subgenres of metal or hard rock or whatever you want to call it. But guitar music would be the overarching umbrella term that's like is everything. Just like EDM is for any music that is made in a DAW and is danceable. That is a global bucket that you can put any club music into. To be honest, I think it's more than that, because you have stuff from electro swing, which will probably never be played at a club, to what's the other called? That very high BPM stuff? Overtone. Overtone technically fits all of the descriptions of electronic dance music, or of EDM, right? But it will never be played at a club. It's kind of funny that whenever you're setting boundaries like that, whenever you're talking about genres like this, there's always something that falls just outside of the definition that you just made, that if you think about it, actually should fall in the definition that you just gave, right? So overtone, technically you could argue you cannot really dance to it, but I would say, yeah, it's EDM for sure. It wouldn't be played in a club. Nobody in their right mind would go to a club where overtone is played. I don't think I can play you anything in with the copyright, but you should look that up. If you don't know what overtone is, you're in for a very cool surprise, I guess. It's often used in the wrong way when people only refer to big room or festival trap. Yes, the popular stuff grabs all of the attention. That is true. And then the popular stuff becomes synonymous with it being all that is available in a specific genre. I don't think that that's an EDM specific problem though. I think that is a problem that happens everywhere, including like outside of music even.
More copyright stuff.
Did you get any problems with the last React? Yes, I got 2 copyright claims. Video is going to come very, very soon. I have recorded it. I have edited it. I just need to do I did the first cut of the edit. I just need to do the secondary cut, and then all of the effects, like putting the face cam where it needs to be, showing up graphics and all of that. And there's 2 other videos that are probably going to come out before that. But it is in the works, the video that's going to explain the whole situation and hopefully make everybody aware of why this is happening and how you can prevent it as an artist. Because it is getting to the point where it becomes really annoying. For those that don't know what he's talking about, whenever I do feedback streams, which is technically what it is, I don't like the word reaction because it ties together with people like XQC just sitting down and not saying anything while a YouTube video is playing and just going like, like that, or they just leave. At the end, that's kind of what it signifies for me to react to something. I'm giving feedback. I'm actively listening. I'm trying to figure out problems. I'm using my expertise to provide new information to the people that submit their music. Reaction videos are very lame. Yes. I think I talked about this before. I edit for a YouTuber called Dark Viper AU, and he is vividly against reaction content, and that's where I get a lot of my stances from as well on like the ethical ways of handling somebody else's art. Because at the end of the day, that's what they're doing, right? They're taking a video which somebody puts a lot of work into, which is an art form, right? Making a video in the same way that making music is, it is an art form to create a proper video. The videos that they usually steal are not the ones that get 1 or 2 views on YouTube made by some kid in their bedroom with fraps installed playing Minecraft and one of those cringy gamer intros. If you know, you know. Been there, I guess. I used to be that kind of child. But it's the stuff by channels like Let Me Know. Do you know that channel? I'll not play any of the video, but I'll show you the channel. If you don't know this channel, then you're in for a surprise. Because this is really good. This is a really good channel. He does like hour-long documentations here, 1.5 hour long, a 1 hour long documentation on Jack the Ripper. This is all animated by himself. He does all of the scoring by himself. He does all of the research by himself. Like, this is part of the video, right? So this is showing what is happening in the video. Look at the details that are in here. Making something like that is an art form. And to just steal that and upload it to your own channel, or to react to it, which doesn't transform it in any way, it's very lame. It's a very weird way of going about things. I don't mind the review, but the reaction videos don't add anything. Yeah, and not only that, it actively hurts the people that are spending the time making, original content. Because those that make reaction videos, they can pump out 20 of them a day without getting tired. Because all you have to do is just literally go like this, sit there, and say something like, that's funny, that's good. That's all a reaction video is. It's nothing more, right? It's bottom of the barrel, the laziest kind of content that you can make. Because in order to make a reaction video of something that, or to react to a video that is 1 hour long, it takes you 1 hour of time. Like, you can pause occasionally if you want to be fancy and say something, but that doesn't change the fact that you're just taking somebody else's content, taking the whole thing, and just re-uploading it to YouTube or streaming it to Twitch or whatever. It's dumb, and it takes away creativity because you're competing. At the end of the day, YouTube is a game about numbers. If you put out more videos, you're going to get more views. And therefore, they're competing with people that cannot keep up with that pace, right? Why would you go to Lemino's channel, the guy that I showed earlier, if instead you can go to XQC's channel or Asmongold or whoever you want as the reactor, and you can see Lemino's video and a whole bunch more videos that he reacted to that day.
My opinion on remixes.
What is your opinion on remixes? Is it not similar to reactions? It is similar, but at the end of the day, a remix, you have to put in roughly the same amount of work in order to get like a new proper remix than the original took. There are like gradients in it, right? You sometimes have a remix where somebody takes a pop song that is huge, puts a kick and bass under it, and calls it a new remix from that track and gets millions of views. I'm not so sure I like that, but at the end of the day, that still involves work, right? The second thing is it depends on like the permissions that you get. If you get permission from the original artist, like, yeah, you can use my stuff for what you're doing, then there's not a lot of things that I can say on that being wrong. You get permission from the original content creator to use their work, and then you can make something new out of that. A reaction really isn't like a remix in video form. A reaction is just you take something, usually unsolicited, right? They won't ask for permission first, like, yo, can I take your video and show it on my stream? They'll never ask that because they know if they ask permission, most of the YouTubers are not going to be dumb and they're not going to say yes. But in a remix, if you're doing a remix properly, if you like go up to the artist and say, hey, I want to remix your stuff, can I remix your stuff? Then yeah, then there's a difference there because you ask for permission. There's a huge difference between officially licensed remix and illegal bootleg remixes. Yes. And that's why you almost never see me do a remix unless I can be assured that I can, you know, contact the artist and both asking them for like, yo, can I have the stems? Can I have all of the stuff that you use to make the project? And also when I'm releasing it, even if it's a year later, like I did with Synux, the live remix, right? That's the kind of guy that I could always, you know, chat to. I had him on Discord. It's a guy that I talked to before. That's okay, because I know that I can contact him if there's something wrong, if there's any issues, if there's any licensing disagreement, like if I were to get claimed on that video or something like that, then I can always go like, no, but I've written here that I have permission from him.
Some cool dynamics trick for mixing and explaining how saturation works.
So I guess the way that I can do this is just like slightly overdrive this. No, wait. I know a trick. You do it with M-Saturator. And saturating with M-Saturator allows you to work with the compander here, I think, in this way. And I can just set the craziest saturation that I want, and it will keep the dynamics intact. I would need to find the tutorial in order to do this. The tutorial for this. I found this tutorial a while ago and I've never really found a use for it. But now that I do, I don't know the guy's name. This video over here. I'm going to not react to it, but I'll shout out this guy's channel and I'll put the video in here as well so you guys can subscribe if you haven't. I'm just going to find like a still of the settings that I need.
Ascolta la playlist di Sanremo su Spotify. Attenzione, l'ascolto prolungato può avere effetti collaterali.
While mixing, I often...
So, M-Saturator tutorial over here somewhere.
down. And ratio is the volume envelope from the original sound coming into M Saturator. The lower you set the threshold knob, the more it will add dynamics to quieter sounds like the hi-hats. So I want it all the way down. And ratio is how hard the compressor and expander will work. So it's basically just a mix knob. And one last thing to note is that according to...
Okay. So this should be the setup then for my dynamic increase in, or distorting a sound or saturating a sound without changing the dynamics. And there we go, we have higher frequencies now. It's also louder, which is funny. I guess that's because we just have the clipping setting over here. What if we go soft? Clip at end. Right now we're clipping and it's just like clipping off then. Which I guess is okay. I can drive this a bit more. Let's go with like 6 minus 6. So you just get more of that higher frequency stuff. Something like that is what I want. Still, overall, I do feel like this sample is like very fuzzy and it's not really like tight. Do you know what I mean? So maybe one of the things that we can try out is some compression. Just so that we can hit those. I want more attack, I guess. I guess the trick that I can use is the reverse. So this makes it a lot tighter, right? Now if we mix this in, we can get like a semi version of this. You can hear how it's just kind of like ducking it down 3 dB, which is what we can see here on the graph. I guess, no, 6 dB. Yeah, that would make sense, because 6 dB is like 50-50. It would be logarithm or square root of something, or logarithm of something, because dB is a logarithmic scale. Minus 6.07, I think it should say, at 50%. No, 6.02, yeah.
Saturation is so nice to make something seem louder.
Yeah, but that's not exactly what we're doing here. I guess, yeah, technically we're making it louder with the kind of curve that we have over here. But what we're really doing is we're maintaining the dynamics, right? So we're not talking about perceived loudness, we're talking about actual loudness here. So this trick allows you to maintain the dynamics. So it goes into clipping and then it gets the dynamics that it had before that back. So it will still look like this, just more saturated than this, I guess.
Sometimes I turn it down afterwards so I'll gain headroom, but it still seems louder.
Yes, because you're boosting it into it. A saturator works just by virtue of you boosting it into it. It's essentially what we're doing here. We're boosting it into this non-linearity. That's what this is called, right? Because this is not linear. A linearity would be something like this. This would map minus 6 dB exactly to minus 6 dB. But if we have a non-linearity, minus 6 dB suddenly becomes minus 3 dB. So it becomes louder. I guess the other, is it a requirement of saturation? I don't even think it's a requirement of saturation, but that you clip at a certain level. Like it doesn't go above a certain level whatsoever in terms of how much you drive into it. I don't think that that second thing actually matters for the definition of saturation. What I do know is that this does matter. The fact that you're pushing it into non-linearity, and usually that non-linearity makes it louder, just by virtue of it like moving everything up, moving from minus 6 dB to minus 3 dB or minus 2 dB to minus 0.5 dB or whatever that is. Just the fact that you're doing that, the fact that you have that non-linearity makes things louder. So you say even though it's not, but then yes, it is louder. You're boosting it into it and therefore the perceived loudness goes up. If you measure it with LUFS or anything that isn't peak volume, then it should be louder. I think the boosted harmonics or overtones make it seem louder. Yes, that's what saturation is. You're increasing the loudness, you're decreasing the peak to RMS ratio, so it becomes louder. What's happening with a saturator, let's go back into that example that we had before. What's happening with a saturator is that it comes in at plus 6 dB, so you make it louder by 6 dB, and then it stops here because it gets clipped off. Together with this non-linearity, which by its very nature takes something that is minus 6 dB and makes it minus 3 dB, is going to make stuff louder. If I make a sound and there's a quiet part that I want to make way more louder, but I don't want the louder part to come out more, how do I do that? Well, there's this thing called a compressor, and what a compressor does is it takes in an audio signal, right? So if I open up M Dynamics, which is a compressor, it takes in an audio signal and you can compress the top of it. So you can smash off the top of it. Anything that exceeds, let me set this down and let me set this to like 6 dB. Anything that exceeds minus 6 dB is going to be compressed, right? So it's going to be smashed lower, depending on attack and release settings here. So what that means is that if a sound used to be here in loudness, it's now going to be here in loudness. So you're lowering the dynamic range this way. And that means that if you then turn it up again, all of this is going to be boosted by 5 dB. This is going to be boosted back by 5 dB, back to where it was in terms of loudness. But the rest is going to be boosted higher.
Why I explain things better?
The way you explain things is just so direct with all of the information you need, simply great. I think one of the biggest things that allows me to explain things well, I guess, I get that a lot, right? That you explain better than this other guy that makes tutorials or other people that I know. I think the thing that makes my explanations better, I don't even know if they are, but a lot of people say it to me, so I'm going to assume that they're right. But I think the fact that I've been producing with speakers for 10 years has made it so that I've developed a very visual style of just production. Like I use all of the analyzers that I have, right? Anytime I make a kick and bass, I go into the size scope and I just look at what I'm doing in the kick and bass. And the same is true whenever I'm EQing. I tend to just very clearly just use the analyzer that is built in the EQ to make my decisions. The fact that I'm a very visual kind of producer in that I use a lot of analyzers, I guess also translates in that I'm very visual with my explanations. And I think being very visual, explaining something and then also showing it while you're explaining something is just an easier way to teach something.
How should you apply plugins when mixing?
Question: when you group your drums, do you apply EQ, compression, distortion, transient shaper better in parallel? I don't apply anything to this project over here. I might apply some processing in the groups in my mixing. So my mixing projects, for example, in Reaper. Can quickly look at some of that. Reaper is a very nice DAW, so it opens quickly. This is a production. I think I was working on filming something here. Yeah, this is the track Beyond, the track that just released on Eclipse, actually. When it comes to my drum group itself, there's nothing on there. I have a kick group, usually, which is my main kick, and then alternative kicks like kick rolls and kick reverses and stuff like that. In this case, I also have like a head layer that is outside of that group for some reason. And then in this case, on my top loop, which is all of this stuff, this. In this case, I have an EQ and a clipper. So that's what I do. It's going to depend on what the project needs. I was asking in general, yeah, I know, but it's always good to show an example. As I said, visual explanations tend to work very well. When it comes to this kind of stuff, I just find the problem and then apply the solution to the problem, right? So, for example, here I say, oh, my drums aren't bright enough in the mix. I want them to be brighter. I guess there's a slight difference in volume there as well, but that's okay. That's something you can work around. There's no like standard way that I have to apply EQ to the drums. I then have to apply compression to the drums. I then have to apply distortion to the drums. And I then have to apply, what was the last thing that you said? Transient shaper to the drums. There's no standard way that I'm doing that. And when it comes to all of these plugins in here, they're always all in series. You want one to go into the next, so that the idea is, okay, I have this problem that I can fix with this plugin. Then I have the next problem that I can fix with this problem. Oh, this plugin also introduces another problem. I need another plugin to fix that. Then it goes to the next one, right? So I have a transient shaper, which increases the attack over here, as an example. But that means that it's going to be a little bit too loud, and I want to clip that off. So I'm using clip shifter to clip it off. Oh, but I don't quite like how the tonality is or something like that. So, or maybe the clipper changes the tonality of the higher frequencies. That could be the case in this case. I don't remember. I did this mix like half a year ago. So then I go into the next thing. So it will always be in series, because from one, you go to the next, just in terms of the problems that you hear.
Strange audio issues with my new interface.
My audio is kind of stuttery. Aha. I have been having some issues sometimes with my audio interface kind of doing strange stuff and cracking like that. I think it's a mismatch between sample rates that I'm hearing, because the pitch also goes down a little bit. I don't know why that is. I cannot find out. I've tried to convert like my whole signal chain to 44.1K. It didn't fix it, so I'm back at 48K. I just sometimes have to reset the voice meter audio engine. And this only started happening once I started using the mini fuse. This is one of those little things that I still need to figure out before I am fully converted into the new system with the monitors and everything, because it's annoying. It started happening with the mini fuse. I don't know if the mini fuse is the problem, or if there's a different part of my system that is the problem. I mean, it started happening when I installed the mini fuse, right? So I'm assuming that that's what's causing the issue. But I don't know. Is YouTube changing the sound in terms of internet rate or transfer or something? No, at least not in regarding that problem with the audio interface, because I hear it as well when it does the thing. It sometimes just messes up. I've noticed it in certain projects more than in others. And for now, I've only been able to get it to happen in Ableton. So it might be a compatibility issue between Ableton, voice meter, and then my audio interface. Because essentially what happens is that this sits in between all of my audio stuff. So this is kind of like my mixer, right? It's a virtual mixer, so that would make sense. What this does is it takes my input, as you can see my microphone over here, and it takes all of the output. So this is, for example, Ableton, and it just sends it where it needs to go. So if I turn off this thing over here, you guys won't be able to hear Ableton, I think. If I turn off this over here, this is, for example, where other browsers and stuff like that. So Google Chrome goes into here. This one is just for Ableton. This is my microphone, and this is where I get audio for Zoom whenever I do stuff with Zoom. So this only goes to my speakers, and it doesn't go out to the virtual outputs, which I then can tap into. So that means that somebody that is calling me on Zoom will hear, it would be like this. They would hear my microphone, Ableton, anything else that they have, but not themselves. So that's how I can kind of separate different things. And I think this might be the issue. It can also be Ableton specific, that for some reason Ableton is just messing things up, because I haven't had this happen in Reaper. That being said, the projects that I load in Ableton are much heavier on the CPU than any Reaper project that I have. So it's the same quality as if we were sitting in your studio. Well, no, because YouTube does do audio compression, but that's not what is causing the bad quality sound that you would that you heard before. That wasn't the problem that you heard before with the audio going all crispy and messed up. That's like something that I can hear as well. It's not a YouTube thing. Yeah, my YouTube streams aren't good enough for you to be able to say like, oh, I'm in your studio and you would hear it the same way that I hear it. There is going to be compression on that. I have it set to the maximum bitrate for audio, which I believe is like 160 something. The quality on YouTube is not so bad that you would hear them. You would definitely hear it in a mixing / studio setting, yes. Like the bitrate is so low that you should hear some fuzzy high frequencies if you're listening in like a studio setting. That it would definitely be noticeable. You shouldn't use my YouTube stream to, for example, reference your mix. Also because this isn't mixed, this is just production. But even if I were playing a master, for example, then it isn't high enough quality to be a good reference. And that's true for any music on YouTube. Even if you download a song from YouTube, you're going to hear that it's MP3 quality 160 bitrate. If you want to hear the difference, what you can do is you can just get a WAV file of your track and then convert that into 160 bitrate MP3 file. That will get you the same kind of compression, and you can hear that you're just missing some higher frequencies, and that the higher frequencies that are there just have a different texture to them.
Is FL Studio bad for making Psytrance?
What do you think about to produce Psytrance with FL Studio? Do it. I do not care about the gear that you're using. Most guys use Ableton for Psytrance. Is there any problem with FL Studio? Always see only Cubase, Logic, or Ableton. I mean, it doesn't matter. You can, if you're really persistent, you can make it in Audacity if you want to.
What is upwards compression?
Upwards compression. Upwards compression is... I don't even think we can do upwards compression in here. It is where essentially this graph were to look like this, where the quietest parts become boosted up. I don't think there's a way that I can do upwards compression in here. Unless it's something like this. Wait a second. I think this might be what I would want to do. Yeah, so this would be upward compression, I think. So the graph goes up, so the quietest parts become way louder, and then the louder parts relatively don't get as much loudness added. You can go even further and say like, okay, the loudest part is now getting quieter, but all of the lower stuff does become louder. I don't think this need matters, but here you have a need to kind of smooth out that curve a little bit if you want to. Is upwards compression similar to multiband? No. Multiband just means that you're splitting up the frequencies. So this is all single band, right? It acts on the whole frequency spectrum. What I can do is I can load a multiband instance here, and then I can basically have two versions of the compressor. I can have a compressor here that does something, and then I have this other compressor here which does another thing to the lower frequencies. What kind of compression or expansion they're doing is independent of the fact that they're multiband or not. Multiband just means this, that you have multiple different frequencies that you or multiple different bands that each process different parts of the signal. It doesn't even have to be frequencies, because as you can see there's tonal transient stuff. I can do mid-side here. So one is the mid band and one is the side band. And I can kind of choose between how much mid, how much side I want in each band. There's level over here, which is really interesting. Anything that exceeds a certain level in dBs gets treated by this band, and anything that does not exceed that level in dBs gets treated by this band. But there's multiple different ways of having multiband. The only requirement is that you're splitting up the signal into multiple different parts, processing those parts independently, and then summing them back together.
Replacing your speakers.
My KRK speakers have too much bass. Should I change them or lowering the bass EQ from the speaker on the backside? That's a very strange question. It's like saying, our wardies closed today. Should I wash them or should I throw them out and buy new ones? I mean, if you can fix that problem with an EQ on the backside, it's better to do that with the EQ on the backside than spending a whole bunch of money that you may not have. By the way, I'll always hold that the gear doesn't matter. Even if you know that your speakers have too much bass, that doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, you compensate for that. If you listen to music on those speakers. If you listen to a lot of professional music, a lot of reference material, you automatically start mixing your own stuff to sound like that. Over a long period of time, of course, you need to build up your skill set. But once you have that ear, once you know what everything is supposed to sound like on your mixers, you'll automatically start to work in a way that your stuff is going to sound the same way.
Should you fill the spectrum?
Lately, I've been trying to get more knowledge around filling the whole frequency spectrum would be interested in hearing some insight on that. That's not something that I care about. What I mainly care about when it comes to frequencies is that every element has its own space, not necessarily that everything is filled up. Because in a good production, that's going to be the case regardless, right? You can look at any spectrum here. Any part of the track is going to have mid frequencies, high frequencies, low frequencies, whatever. Here there's maybe a little bit less high frequencies. This is a part that is a little bit lower energy, so don't want those high frequencies in there. But overall, like that, it doesn't really matter that the frequency spectrum is always full. What is more important is that those elements that you put in there have the space to exist. Say if a part is a synth, high up and kick bass, should I add some mid-range something to fill out the space? Generally speaking, when it comes to Psytrance synths, you should have your synths in such a way that they already generate mid-range. So I'm always playing at F-sharp 0 for any of my synths, which means that they're basically playing in the same register as my bassline, and then I just filter out everything that is directly clashing with my bassline. This is a bad example, but if I put it here, yeah, you can see I'm just removing the very low sub stuff that you don't need. But the mid-range is already taken care of partially by the synths here, and partially by the bassline just existing in that spot as well. I never find myself in a place where, for example, one of my synths is playing 3 octaves above the bassline. So the kick and bass is like half the spectrum, so you only have 1K and up to work with. No, it is not that strict in the sense that you do have spaces where sounds merge, right? Because technically speaking, the bassline goes up to like 8K in terms of where that click exists. But that is so low volume that you still have space that you can put other stuff on top of that. And that's, for example, why you don't really hear the click existing anymore in this part. It just gets masked by those other frequencies. What is, for example, important, that a mistake that you could, for example, make is one like this, where you have something that is like actively causing harm to the bassline's most important part, meaning the sub bass, right? If I were to do something dumb like this, maybe, that's going to cause massive issues. We don't want any of that. So that's where you kind of separate frequencies. But it doesn't mean that, oh, I have the bassline going up until 1K, and then the synth goes from 1K to 3K, and then the hi-hats go from 3K to 5K, and then the snare goes from 5K to 7K, and so on and so on. It's not that tight of a thing. You are mixing, right? You're not separating.
What is the longest studio session I've ever had?
What is the longest session that you've ever had? To be honest, I've done whole days in the studio where I just wake up, sit down, get a creative boost, and just start producing till the end of the day. That just kind of happens, but I wouldn't be able to give you like an exact number. Maybe like 12 hours, something like that. Of course, during that session, I've stood up and made myself food. I've taken breaks. I take regular breaks. I've maybe had like half an hour of time where I was just like, okay, I'm going to pause for a little bit and I'm going to watch some YouTube videos in the meantime or something like that. But I've had like whole days where I would just work on one thing, one project, and just spend my time working on that throughout the whole day. At the end of the day, this is my job. So I treat it as a job. I wake up, I start doing it, and then I do it the whole day, and then I stop it. Actually, I treat it more as a job because people go home from their job and then they stop working on that, and I don't tend to do that.
Do I want to be a sound scientist?
Do you plan on become a music/sound scientist? I was studying for that, but I stopped it because it was hella boring. It was only involving math and stuff like that, and that's not actually what I like. I like the technical things that I do within Ableton and sound design, I guess, purely for the fact that it allows me to be creative. And that is what was missing from my studies back when I used to study musical engineering. Because it would only be the technical stuff for technicality's sake. There was no real creative end goal with it. So that's the reason I guess I decided to stop pursuing that. We would talk about things like speaker design and the electronic circuit behind like a mixing console without actually getting to use speakers or a mixing console.
Career advice from Projektor.
I'm thinking about starting my career as a Psytrance DJ and producer after 12 years of producing and practicing progressive house and big room music. What do you think about it? I mean, what do you want me to say? Yeah, it's going to happen. I cannot guarantee you a career, if that's what you're asking. You should try it. You should see what happens, but you can never be sure before you start. There's this fun mindset that I also talked about in my Sound Design is Easy video, where people expect somebody like me to have learned everything there is to know about sound design and then learn sound design. But that's not the case. You start doing things and then you learn how to actually do those things. So if you've never made Psytrance and you want to start a career in making Psytrance, start making some Psytrance, see if it works for you, see if other people like it, and if that does seem to be the case, then go do that.
When is the sound too wide?
How do you tell if something is too wide? There's two ways. One is the perception. I want the width to be a certain way. I want to find an example of stereo processor here. I want the width to be a certain way just on the feel of it. Do I want this sound to come from here or do I want the sound to come from here? Kick and bass, I want it to be mono, right? I want it to come from around here, from around the center. I want that stability from it. Same with the drums. I don't want this to spread out and be all over the place. I want it to be stable in the middle, in the center. The other thing that you can do is just like a check that we often do with Signalizer when I'm listening to feedback, which is where it just is too wide. So where's Signalizer? I should have Signalizer in here, right? In tools maybe? Yeah. Here you can see if it's too wide, it will go out of phase. It will start to cancel with itself. Are there things that you mix in mono only? There are a few things that I mainly keep mono. So the kick is completely mono for me. The bassline lowest few harmonics, I would say, are mostly mono. Like you can see here, I have a stereo spread on it. It's only affecting 320 Hertz and above. So anything below that is going to be more mono. Now there's a slight roll off because this is a filter. It's not like below this frequency, nothing is going to be stereo. It's just going to roll off like that. I also have the focus, so it focuses a little bit more on the higher frequencies within this band. Other than that, I like to have my top drums mainly mono. Sometimes I like to layer a little bit of reverb on top of them and stuff like that. But it's very subjective kind of, because it's almost like anything that needs to be central needs to be fairly mono. Even some cases like vocals would work more if they're more mono. But in general, I do like to stereoize most of my things, I should say. The main golden rule that everything should, or that something should be completely mono is the kick and the lowest frequency of the bass, the sub bass, right? The lowest harmonic of the bass line. Those two things, in my opinion, should be completely mono without question. And then even in this, the first or the second harmonic, I guess. Again, I still don't know if it's the first harmonic after the fundamental or the second harmonic because the first harmonic is the fundamental. I'm going to call it the second harmonic. So the harmonic above the fundamental, even that can already be a little bit stereo. But the sub bass and the kick should be completely mono. If the source sound is mono, how do you force stereo on it? You use a stereonizer. Like the one that I showed before, like M Stereo Spread. There is a process in here where it is spectrally split up in 26 bands. So it takes this frequency range, it splits it up into 26 bands, and then it makes a difference in the left channel and the right channel so that there's differences in there. Because stereo width is the amount of difference between the left and the right channel. If something is completely mono, the only thing that means is that the left and the right channel are doing the exact same thing in terms of what the speakers are doing, how the speakers are like moving, right? So I have a speaker here that's moving like this, I have a speaker there that's moving like that. If they're doing the same thing, it's going to sound like the sound is coming straight from there, straight from the middle. If this is going like this, if they're doing different things, it's going to come from the side because we can hear that, oh, that one is doing something different than that one. So you can clone them and pan? No, because then you're taking a sound that is equal and then you pan it left and right. So you have in the left channel and in the right channel the same sound. So it goes back to mono. What you want is differences in those sounds. What you could do is, for example, say that you want to make something stereo. Take a hi-hat, pan it left, take a copy of that hi-hat, pan it right, and then make some change to it. Add maybe a reverb on the left one and a chorus on the right one. Something like that. There need to be differences in the channel. But to be honest, making something stereo, the best way to do it is just with a plugin like this, like a stereo spreading tool.
Does the stereo spread just introduce different delays?
I am not entirely sure what exactly it does. Any delay-based processing. It is a very complicated IIR filter whose own... a phase alteration from the left channel and others from the right channel in such a way that the mono output will give the original signal. Again, the main difficulty is making this approach sound natural and avoid moving the stereo position out of the center. The other which provides very high transparency, very natural sound, and keeps the stereo location in the center as much as possible. I have had problems with it moving out of the center by introducing this particular, or by using this particular tool. So what it's doing is it's filtering out frequencies differently from the left and the right channel.
Multiple projects might be the key to creativity.
To be honest, I'm getting really tired of this project. I was trying to get like a melodic idea sitting in here. I just don't know what element I can put in here that would also work for this segment over here. What do you do with projects like that when you hit a wall? I just close them. I have enough projects to work on. Partially for the stream, I don't close it now and move on to a different project. And I kind of force myself to do it. I partially force myself to work on it because I know that eventually I'm going to get some results if I just try hard enough. If I wasn't streaming, to be honest, I would have started working on another project by now. Because part of the incentive is to have a cohesive stream, to always be working on the same project and always even in like the same section. Right? I've talked about this in the last conversations when somebody asked about ADHD. Maybe that was even you, Kat, who said like ADHD moment, and then I ranted a little bit about how my ADHD makes me, when I'm normally producing, go all over the place. Like I'll work on something here, I'll work over something there. And the same is true when I'm not feeling a certain project. I'll just move on to another project. I have like 7, 8 projects that I can work on. So I can just open up a different one. I feel like I've been stuck just trying to get one thing done. Should I just do 8 different projects? I mean, this is what works for me. Everybody's going to have their own method of breaking the writer's block, as they say. But for me, having multiple projects, especially in different stages, like one is a mixing project, one is in early production, one is like finishing up details, one is halfway through writing, stuff like that. Having different stages of different projects really helps me because it allows me to work in different kind of mindsets. One is very detail oriented, one is like very big idea, one is very technical in that I'm mixing and I'm not really writing anymore. So whatever I feel like to do, I can just do that. The reason that I'm able to do that is, again, this is my job. I spend the whole day working on either music or something related to music, videos, stuff like that. It is easier for me to maintain that many projects and also have them be this size with this many tracks and everything sounding the way that I want it to sound, because it does take a lot of time to make something like this, right? It's not something that you quickly do. So to say to somebody who maybe has like 2 or 3 hours a week to produce, you should have 8 projects all at different stages, and you should do full mixing projects, and you should export all of your tracks like I do and then mix them in a different DAW. That's not realistic. So you need to find your own version of that. Which different thing can you do in your workflow that makes you more creative?
All the music I release is old.
I feel like looking back at your older projects is the biggest motivation and the biggest break at the same time. You see your progress, but also how weak you've been and maybe still are.
I agree with Spectrum of Sounds. There is a truth in that. It's both inspiring to know that you're doing better with your music, and it's terrible knowing that all people ever are going to hear as like full releases is what you were capable of last year or half a year ago in terms of your skill, right? Like I'm currently working, as I said, on a second album, and I want to do 10 tracks. the last tracks that you guys have heard of me have been, or has been, I guess, the EP in terms of recency of production. And even that EP, I started producing that 2 years ago with the first tracks from that I started working on for that particular EP. So that means that some of the music that is coming out now, I guess the last stuff that came out was recently, the Eclipse stuff. I completely forgot about that. But even that, I started working on that more than a year ago, I should say. Yes, because I started working on that before the 4 producers 1 beat video came out. Remember that? Like January last year, I posted that video where 4 people got the same Psytrance kick and bass and they all had to make synths and stuff on top of that. Or actually beat. I think it also included like the top drums and crashes and stuff like that. But I started working on at least one of the tracks before I posted that video. So the stuff that came out 2 weeks ago with the launch of Eclipse, the 23rd of January, was made over a year ago. So I always feel like you guys are kind of catching up to my ability as a musician. Now obviously you guys are hearing what I'm making now during the live stream. But it's a little bit strange that, or it's a strange feeling knowing that the music that is out there representing who you are as an artist is always going to be your old stuff.
What genres did I fail at?
What are the genres that you tried and failed at, like was really not your thing? I mean, failing is always subjective. I would argue that everything that I did before Psytrance is something that I failed at, looking at how well my career is going now versus what I was doing before that. Because before I started doing Psytrance, I had no career in music whatsoever, right? In fact, I would argue that the only reason that I have a career now is because I started doing the tutorials and all of that stuff together. And through doing that and through really learning Psytrance, I learned how to actually make professional music. I don't think if you go back to my music from before then, anything would sound professional. I say would because I don't actually have any of the music anymore. Like, I don't keep that stuff around. So for me, personally, everything failed. But somebody else may have enjoyed it and may have liked the kind of music. I don't think I've ever produced a genre where I just opened up a project, tried it once and said like, no, this is really not for me. The only conclusion that I can usually draw if I do that is like, okay, this project just sucks. And if I want to do this again, I should try it again.
I don't look forward to movies.
Are there any movies you're looking forward to? No, I am not much of a movie guy. The only entertainment that I consume in like video format would be YouTube. I used to care a lot more about movies. Like I used to watch a lot more movies. I would used to go to the cinema with friends and stuff like that as well. And I still do for my friends, right? Like if my friends ask me, hey, do you want to go to the cinema? I'll still say yes. But there's not really any movie anymore that feels like it really captures me, that feels like a story that I actually want to see. And I have perfect alternatives that are completely free on YouTube that I can just easily access. So for me, going to the movies, I don't find it interesting enough, to be honest.
I need to learn to say it like this.
The fundamental is indeed the first harmonic. The first overtone is the second harmonic. I should teach myself to then say it like that, because I've been saying fundamental, first harmonic, second harmonic, third harmonic, and that's not the true. It should be fundamental, second harmonic, third harmonic, and so on and so on. Maybe I should just start using the term overtone, but it's something that I've never been able to teach myself.
So that's going to be the end of it. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy that, there's 2 more videos on your screen that YouTube may think that you like. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.